It was 1942, and the Coconut Grove was the place to be. With its tropical decorations and lighthearted atmosphere, it was a hotspot in Boston's busy nightlife, and the evening of November 28th was no different. It was not the first night of festivities with far too many people and far too few rules, but it would become the deciding night for the 1,000 within the Coconut Grove. In just 30 short minutes, hundreds died in what would soon be proclaimed the deadliest nightclub fire in history, devastating the city of Boston. However, this tragedy also sparked change, leading to unprecedented triumphs in the fields of medicine and fire safety that would ultimately save the lives of millions across the globe. From the destruction and suffering, the world took the terrible lessons of the fire and built upon them in a serious attempt to never again face the horror of the 492 lives lost. The Coconut Grove opened its doors in 1927 and made its name as an illegal speakeasy in the midst of Prohibition. After Prohibition fell in 1933, the nightclub opened for legitimate business and soon came to define Boston's social scene during the tense times of World War II. The club was regularly packed, often hundreds over its legal maximum capacity, leaving little room to escape in the event of an emergency. Unfortunately, scenes like this were common throughout the United States, as many cities had impractical building codes. Since there were no national criteria for fire safety, jurisdictions varied greatly in their regulation. Secretary Robert Moulton of the National Fire Protection Agency noted at the time, building laws are in a chaotic condition, subject to incompetent enforcement, political influence, and careless management. Due to this weak enforcement, any small fire could easily turn fatal if the buildings weren't up to code. This was the case just a week before the tragedy, when Fire Inspector Frank Linney unwittingly deemed the club's condition good, setting the stage for the disaster to come. On the evening of November 28, 1942, the Coconut Grove was bustling and double its legal maximum capacity. Around 10:15 p.m., a busboy in the basement's Melody Lounge allegedly lit a match to find a broken light bulb. In doing so, he ignited a highly flammable fake palm tree decoration. As customers noticed the fire, they panicked and sprinted for the only known exit from the basement lounge, a 4-foot-wide set of stairs with an emergency exit at the top. Tragically, this and other emergency exits had been locked by the owner to prevent customers from leaving without paying, making it nearly impossible to escape. As one survivor recounted, "The flames were on my heels and crawled right along and spread out and then started smoking." In a matter of minutes, the rapidly spreading ball of fire engulfed the entire basement and blazed up the stairs and into the lobby. As people desperately tried to escape, they flipped tables and chairs, leaving obstacles for others behind them.
All you could hear were people yelling, glass breaking, dishes breaking. It was total panic. They started running, but they didn't know where to run. They didn't know where the exits were.
People sprinted for one of the only open exits, a slow revolving door at the front of the club. In a panic, they pushed on both sides of the door, leaving it in rotational deadlock and trapping customers inside the building amid the toxic fumes of the fire. The fire escalated to a 5-alarm status within the fire department, leading hundreds of first responders in the Boston area to rush to the scene. While the firefighters were able to completely put out the fire in less than 1 hour, hundreds had already died, while hundreds more were sent to hospitals with various injuries. By 10:35 p.m., many victims were brought to Massachusetts General Hospital and Boston City Hospital. Patients were admitted at Boston City Hospital at a rate of 1 patient every 11 seconds for over an hour, one of the highest recorded admittance rates ever. As Dr. John McPherson described, the injured were flowing in like a mighty stream. The scene was simply indescribable. Men and women with charred and blackened faces, all hair burned off, skin hanging in shreds, and most of them in great pain. Fortunately, local hospitals had implemented disaster contingency plans following the attack on Pearl Harbor, that included having more fluid reserves and emergency personnel on call. The victims suffered from a wide range of burn injuries, leading to pivotal medical innovations in two prominent areas. First was burn treatment. The hundreds of burn patients afforded doctors and researchers the opportunity to attempt new methods of burn treatment. In particular, doctors broke from the traditional but ineffective method of bathing the patient in tannic acid and instead applied gauze and petroleum jelly to completely sterilize wounds. Transitioning away from the use of tannic acid led to much lower mortality rates and an overall increase in the quality of patient treatment. Second, the tragedy also provided the opportunity for the first ever clinical use of penicillin on a large scale. At the time, penicillin was unknown to the public and lacked support from the government, with laboratory tests about its effects proving inconclusive. However, at Massachusetts General Hospital, a test group of Coconut Grove patients was given penicillin to treat infections, while Boston City Hospital continued to use traditional methods. Remarkably, of those who received the new treatment, no one died of burn injuries. However, over a third of the burn patients treated with traditional methods died. The success of penicillin spread far beyond the Coconut Grove fire, triggering immediate mass production of the drug. Both penicillin and the new burn treatment techniques were immediately put into use in the following months at the end of World War II, saving the lives of countless soldiers. In the days following the fire, national and local news agencies in Boston broke news of the fire. The news quickly spurred a nationwide response, eclipsing headlines about the atrocities of World War II and evoking sympathy as well as outrage nationwide. In the following legal proceedings, the owners were arrested for negligent manslaughter by blocking the exits.
It was a terrible, terrible time in Boston. Almost everybody had some connection. Either they had a friend or a relative who were at the club. Almost 500 people in a city as small as Boston was a big deal. So people were in shock, horror, and just absolutely devastated for it.
The tragedy prompted a call for heavily increased fire safety, not just in Boston, but nationwide. One major change was the use of outward swinging doors. At the time of the fire, most exits in the Coconut Grove were inward swinging, creating piles of bodies at the doors. In later testimonies, firefighters claimed that over 300 lives could have been saved if these doors were outward swinging. As a result, nationwide regulations required most major exits to be equipped with outward swinging doors. In a 1944 report concerning the Coconut Grove fire, Boston Fire Commissioner William Riley demanded drastic changes. Among the important amendments to fire safety codes were the regulations requiring automatic sprinklers and emergency lighting, and the outlawing of combustible materials such as the palm tree decorations in the Coconut Grove. The devastation of the fire also led local jurisdictions nationwide to take action complementary to new national regulations and standards. Within just 1 week, sweeping fire safety changes were implemented in cities such as St. Louis, Miami, and Chicago. Accompanying these changes, fire inspectors also conducted more thorough inspections. Today, the effects of the Coconut Grove are realized through basic safety requirements that exist in public spaces. Though we might take sprinkler systems, outward swinging doors, and illuminated exit signs for granted, they have had an immeasurable impact on public safety over the years.
We see fires every day where they're non-events, which is exactly what we want, where fire alarm systems, automatic sprinklers, proper exits, emergency lighting, proper compartmentation, proper materials, everything works like it's supposed to work, and it's a non-event.
In the 1970s, there were roughly 12,000 people a year dying from fire just in the United States. Today, that number is somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000. Because we've implemented many of the things that we've learned from the Coconut Grove fire.
The tragedy of the Coconut Grove devastated Boston on a personal and communal level, but it paved the way for future improvements in the fields of medicine and fire safety that, in turn, saved more lives than it cost. For the 492 people killed on November 28, 1942, it was sadly their last dance. But for millions in the future, the tragedy was a wake-up call for greater awareness and innovation.